Chapter 1. The Mysterious Visitor. It was a particularly fine day in London, the kind of day where the sun hung in the sky like a golden coin, and the city hummed with the rhythm of life. The hustle of pedestrians, the whir of carriages, and the distant clatter of street vendors filled the air with that familiar sense of busy, ordered chaos. But amidst this symphony of sound, there was a peculiar calm in the air that was not lost on Hercule Poirot. The detective was enjoying a quiet breakfast in his modest flat on the banks of the River Thames, his small dining table set with precision, just as it always was. His freshly pressed suit hung on a nearby chair, awaiting his attention for the day's activities, though Poirot had no particular plans. It had been weeks since his last case, and he was beginning to feel the subtle stirrings of unease that always accompanied such lulls in his career. A detective, after all, is rarely content without a mystery to unravel. As Poirot carefully placed a spoonful of his marmalade onto his toast, a sharp knock at the door interrupted his contemplation. It was not the kind of knock one might expect from a familiar visitor or a friend. It was measured, deliberate, and carried with it a weight of expectation. Poirot's brows furrowed, his hand pausing mid-air. "Entrez," he called out, his voice a soft but firm invitation. The door swung open, revealing a woman of elegant if slightly austere bearing. She was tall and slender, with dark, piercing eyes that seemed to look right through him. Her attire was simple, yet exquisite. A black dress with intricate lace trimmings, a silver necklace at her throat, and a delicate veil that framed her face in mystery. She stepped inside without a word, her gaze not meeting Poirot's immediately. Poirot studied her with quiet interest. She appeared poised and composed, but there was a faint aura of distress about her, an undercurrent of urgency that no amount of grace could fully conceal. This was not a visit made lightly. "Madame," Poirot greeted her with a nod, motioning to the chair opposite him. "Do come in. It is not often I have the pleasure of receiving visitors at such an hour." The woman hesitated before sitting, folding her hands delicately on her lap. Poirot offered her a cup of tea, but she declined with a subtle shake of her head. Instead, her eyes locked with his. "I am in need of your services, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice as smooth as silk, yet laced with an unmistakable tension. "There has been a theft." Poirot leaned forward slightly, his attention now fully engaged. "A theft, you say?" he murmured, his fingers idly tapping on the edge of his teacup. "But I must confess, madame, I do not see the urgency in such a matter unless it is more than just a simple robbery." The woman's eyes flickered for a moment, as if considering whether to reveal the full scope of the situation. She then spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper, as though the weight of her words might have drawn attention from some unseen observer. "It is not just a theft, Monsieur Poirot. It is the theft of something most unique, something of great value. And I fear that this event has set into motion a series of events that could lead to far greater consequences. You see," she continued, lowering her voice even further, "the object that was taken is no ordinary possession. It is a piece from an ancient chess set." Poirot's expression did not change, but his mind began to work in rapid succession. He had encountered a variety of cases in his career, but an antique chess piece was a curious premise. Something about her demeanour, however, suggested this was no mere trinket. An ancient chess set, Poirot repeated, letting the words linger in the air. Pray, tell me more. What is so special about this particular set? The woman paused, taking a deep breath, and then proceeded to unfold the story. It belonged to my late father, she began. He was a collector of rare and unusual artifacts, and among the treasures he held dear was this chess set, an ivory set, carved in exquisite detail, each piece representing a historical figure or mythological character. The set itself is said to have been crafted in the 18th century, though its origins are shrouded in mystery. My father guarded it closely, often speaking of its extraordinary worth, both in material and in history. He claimed that one of the pieces, the Queen, was a key to unlocking a long-forgotten secret. But, she hesitated, before he could reveal more, he passed away. Poirot leaned back in his chair, processing the information. A chess set tied to a secret, an intriguing notion indeed. But there was something else, something she had not yet told him. And which piece was taken, madam? Poirot asked, his tone gently probing. Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of anxiety crossing her face. The Ivory Knight. It is said to be the most important piece of the entire set. The knight holds the key, according to my father's notes. Without it, the set is incomplete, and its true purpose remains hidden. Poirot's mind raced. A knight, a symbol of strategy and protection, no less. And from what she had said, it seemed to hold the answer to a secret, a riddle that had remained unsolved for generations. But why would someone steal such an item? And why, above all, had the thief taken the knight? Who else knew of this significance? Poirot asked, his gaze fixed on her face, watching for any sign of hesitation. Only a few trusted individuals, she replied quickly. My father's closest associates, some colleagues from his time at the British Museum. But my father was a man who did not trust easily. He had a particular disdain for those who sought to exploit his collection. I believe he feared that the set, especially the knight, could fall into the wrong hands. Poirot's gaze softened. It was clear that this woman's attachment to the chess set was more than just sentimental. She had inherited not only her father's collection, but also his secrets. A puzzle, a mystery, and now a crime. Madame, I will accept your case, Poirot declared, his voice firm with resolve. But I must caution you. The theft of an object, such as this, is never simple. It is tied to a web of motivations, desires, and sometimes even ancient grudges. I shall need to know everything about your father's circle, the people who were closest to him. They may hold the key to this mystery. The woman nodded, relief flooding her features, though her tension had not entirely dissipated. Of course, Monsieur Poirot, I will provide you with all the information you need. I have come to you because I know you are the only one who can uncover the truth. Poirot rose from his chair, his expression calm but resolute. Then let us begin, madame. The mystery of the ivory chess piece awaits, and I shall see it solved. As the woman stood to leave, she paused for a moment, her hand resting on the doorframe. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. I trust that you will find the knight, and with it, the answers that have eluded us for so long. Poirot gave her a small but reassuring smile, his mind already spinning with the possibilities. "Indeed, madame. Rest assured, the puzzle shall be solved." With that, she left, and Poirot stood still for a moment, his eyes fixed on the empty space where she had been. A chess piece, a symbol of both intellect and war, and a secret that was bound to lead him down a path filled with intrigue, deception, and, no doubt, danger. As Poirot turned back to his breakfast, he set aside his toast and picked up his phone. The game had begun, and in the end it was not just about the knight. It was about the player behind the pieces, and Hercule Poirot would not rest until the mystery was solved. Chapter 2. The Clue in the Library. Hercule Poirot had never been a man to act in haste. His first step, when taking on a case, was always to gather as much information as possible, to study the situation with patience and precision. In this case, the situation was delicate. The theft of a single chess piece, while seemingly trivial, was not so simple as it appeared. The Ivory Knight, according to the woman's story, was not only a rare artifact, but also the key to some long-forgotten secret. Poirot's interest was piqued, but where, he wondered, did the mystery truly lie? First course of action was clear. If this case had any chance of resolution, Poirot would need to understand the full extent of the chess set's history. He would have to delve into the people who had surrounded the late father of the woman who had come to him for help. He needed to visit the scene where the crime had occurred, the collection room, or as it was known in the family, the chess room. Poirot arrived at the family estate, a stately old house nestled on the outskirts of London. The air was crisp, and the drive from the city had taken longer than expected. The house itself was grand, but there was something about it. Perhaps the faded elegance, the layers of dust collecting on the windows, that gave it a sense of being frozen in time. As Poirot approached the front door, the woman greeted him with a polite nod, though he could see that she was still weighed down by the tension of the situation. It was clear she was struggling to keep her composure, but her eyes betrayed her nervousness. "Thank you for coming, Monsieur Poirot," she said, leading him into the house. "I trust that you'll find the necessary answers, but I must warn you that the theft, it's left us all a little shaken." Poirot smiled reassuringly. "Ah, madame, that is precisely why you called for me. It is not merely the theft, but the nature of it, the fact that someone was willing to take something so small, so seemingly insignificant, that piques my curiosity." The woman led him down a long corridor and into a large wood-panelled room at the back of the house. The room was dimly lit, its heavy curtains drawn tight against the morning light. As Poirot stepped inside, he could see the remnants of the grand collection. The shelves filled with books, glass cabinets displaying various objects of rare beauty, and the focal point of the room, the chess set. It sat under a glass case in the centre of the room, the pieces neatly arranged in their starting positions. Poirot could not help but be impressed by the craftsmanship. The pieces were delicately carved from ivory, with an intricate design that revealed both artistic beauty and technical skill. He could understand why the late owner of the collection had placed such importance on this particular set. The level of detail in the carvings was astonishing, with each piece representing a figure of historical or mythological significance. The woman walked over to the glass case and stood beside it, her fingers tracing the air just above the missing knight. "The knight was here," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was always in this spot, between the Queen and the Bishop. Now it's gone." Poirot examined the empty space where the knight had once stood. The absence was striking, as though something vital had been removed, leaving the set incomplete, unbalanced. "Was the room locked?" Poirot asked, his voice soft but direct. "The thief would have had to break in, yes?" "Yes," the woman replied. "The room was locked. We were the only ones who had the key. The servants, the family, and myself." Poirot nodded. "And yet the thief managed to bypass this security. Tell me, madame, were there any signs of forced entry? Were there any marks, any traces left behind?" She shook her head. "No, Monsieur Poirot, no sign of forced entry. The glass case was intact. It was as if the knight simply vanished from within the case." Poirot's mind began to churn. A disappearance without a trace. It was a curious puzzle indeed. Most thieves left some form of evidence behind, whether it was a clue or a mistake made in haste. But this thief had been careful. "Too careful, I must ask, madam," Poirot said, turning his attention back to her. "Who knew about the significance of this particular chess set? Apart from you, of course." The woman seemed to hesitate for a moment before answering. "Only a select few, my father's closest colleagues. He was very secretive about his collection, but I know that he often spoke with a man named Reginald Cartwright, a scholar of ancient artifacts, who was particularly interested in the set. I suspect that Cartwright might know something more about the set's importance." "Ah," Poirot said, his mind moving quickly. "Reginald Cartwright, you say? Is he still in London?" "Yes," the woman replied. "He resides at a small flat near the British Museum. He was my father's confidant, and I believe he could shed some light on the set's history." Poirot's interest deepened. A scholar of ancient artifacts. It was becoming clearer to him that this theft was no ordinary crime. It was as if someone had a vested interest in this chess set, not merely for its value, but for what it represented. He had seen this before. Cases where objects were stolen not for their material worth, but for the secrets they concealed. "I shall pay this Mr. Cartwright a visit," Poirot declared, his tone resolute. "Perhaps he can provide some insight into the origins of the set. Or perhaps he knows more about the missing knight than he is letting on." The woman nodded gratefully, though there was still a shadow of doubt in her eyes. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. I will await your findings." Poirot made his way back to the front of the house, his mind racing with possibilities. The knight's disappearance had all the hallmarks of a well-planned heist. An inside job, perhaps, orchestrated by someone with knowledge of the set's significance. And yet, there was still something amiss. Why take the knight alone? Why not steal the entire set? The theft, if it was indeed a crime of greed, had been executed with an unusual level of precision. There was something more at play here, something hidden beneath the surface. As Poirot climbed into his waiting cab, he glanced back at the house one last time. There was no doubt in his mind that the mystery of the ivory chess set was far from over. In fact, he suspected that the real puzzle had only just begun. His thoughts turned to Reginald Cartwright. The scholar would be his next step, but Poirot knew that Cartwright like so many in his line of work, might not be as forthcoming as one would hope. No matter, Poirot thought with a slight smile. He would get to the heart of the matter soon enough. It was his way. The game, as they say, was afoot. Chapter 3. The Scholar's Secret. The next morning, Hercule Poirot found himself standing before a modest building near the British Museum. The area, typically bustling with tourists and scholars, was quiet this time of day, with only a handful of visitors navigating the streets. The building was a stark contrast to the grandeur of the family estate he had visited earlier. It was a 4-story townhouse, narrow and unassuming, with a faded brass plaque by the door bearing the name Reginald Cartwright, antiquarian and scholar. Poirot examined the building closely. There was nothing to suggest that the occupant was involved in any criminal activities, but then again, the most dangerous criminals often came in the most innocuous of forms. He took a moment to adjust his coat, checking his polished shoes, and then knocked on the door with his customary deliberation. The door opened to reveal a thin, tall man with a pair of pince-nez perched on his nose. His white shirt and suspenders made him look every bit the scholar, but it was his sharp, calculating gaze that caught Poirot's attention. Reginald Cartwright had the look of someone who had spent far too many hours alone with old tomes and artifacts. His features were fine and elegant, though there was a certain hardness to his expression. "Good morning, Monsieur Cartwright," Poirot said, his voice warm but firm. "I am Hercule Poirot. I am here to inquire about an item of great importance, an item I believe may have come into your acquaintance." Cartwright blinked, taken aback by the unexpected visitor. His eyes darted briefly to the window, and then to Poirot's face. A slight frown appeared on his lips, but he quickly masked it with a more neutral expression. "Poirot, you say?" Cartwright mused, his accent clipped and precise. "What is this about? I am not accustomed to receiving unannounced visitors at this hour, but if it is a matter of scholarship, I suppose I could spare a few moments. Come in, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot stepped into the townhouse, observing the interiors with his usual keen eye. The walls were lined with shelves filled with books, many of them old and rare, some worn with age, others in pristine condition. The air smelled faintly of dust and leather, a scent that always intrigued Poirot. The space felt warm, despite its austerity, as though Cartwright had poured his entire being into the world of antiquities. "Please, do take a seat." Cartwright gestured to a worn armchair near a small writing desk. "Now, what is it that brings you to my humble abode? I assume this is not a social call." Poirot took the chair gracefully, smoothing his coat and adjusting his posture. He was nothing if not the epitome of calm, despite his mounting curiosity. "No, Monsieur Cartwright, this is no social visit," Poirot replied. "I am investigating a theft that has recently occurred at the estate of a woman named Elizabeth Ardmore. A valuable chess piece was stolen, an ivory knight from a set of considerable historical significance. The set, I understand, has been in her family for generations, and its origins are a mystery in themselves." At the mention of the chess set, Poirot noticed a slight, almost imperceptible tightening of Cartwright's jaw. The antiquarian leaned forward, slightly, though his expression remained composed. "Interesting," Cartwright said softly. "And what makes you think I would know anything about such a matter?" I have had little to do with the Ardmore family for many years, and certainly no dealings with any chess sets. Poirot's eyes did not leave Cartwright's face. He allowed the silence to hang in the air for a moment, watching as the scholar shifted in his seat. "Ah, but you see, Monsieur Cartwright," Poirot said, his voice now carrying the hint of a smile, "I believe you know more about this chess set than you are letting on. You see, I have it from a reliable source that you have spent considerable time conversing with Elizabeth's late father, a man by the name of Gregory Ardmore. It is also my understanding that you and Gregory Ardmore shared an interest in rare and ancient objects." Cartwright's face hardened for a moment, but Poirot's gaze remained steady, undeterred by the scholar's attempt to mask his discomfort. It was clear to Poirot that there was something about this chess set that Cartwright was not willing to reveal. "I did indeed know Gregory Ardmore," Cartwright finally replied, his voice less certain than before. "But I assure you, Monsieur Poirot, our dealings were always academic in nature. We discussed a variety of topics, particularly regarding the history of artifacts and their significance in the broader context of European culture. I would never have had any interest in something as frivolous as a chess set." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "Ah, so you dismiss it as frivolous, Monsieur Cartwright? I would suggest that a man of your experience in the study of rare objects would not easily dismiss such a thing. There must be something more to this set than meets the eye." Cartwright's eyes darted to the door briefly before he returned his gaze to Poirot. He exhaled slowly, as though deciding whether or not to say more. "Very well, Poirot," Cartwright said finally, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There is more to the Ardmore chess set than anyone realizes, but it is not for the faint of heart. Gregory Ardmore was not just an enthusiast of rare objects. He was a man obsessed with certain pieces of history, objects with a hidden significance. The chess set is part of something far larger, something more dangerous. You see, it is not just any set, it contains a secret." Poirot leaned forward, his interest piqued. "A secret? But what sort of secret?" Cartwright hesitated again, clearly struggling with whether or not to reveal more. His eyes seemed distant for a moment, as though reliving old memories that he was unwilling to confront. "I cannot say too much," he finally admitted. "But I will tell you this. The chess set, as you call it, is the key to something far more ancient. It is a map, in a sense, but not a map to a place. It is a map to knowledge, knowledge that many would kill to possess." Poirot's mind began to work at full speed. A map to knowledge. The theft of a single piece, the Ivory Knight. Could it have been stolen not for its material worth, but for what it might unlock? "Monsieur Cartwright," Poirot said, his voice steady and full of determination, "I believe you are not telling me everything. If you know what is at stake here, then you must understand the importance of finding that knight. Whoever took it, monsieur, does not merely want an artifact. They seek something much, much more." Cartwright's face grew pale, his hand trembling slightly as he adjusted his glasses. I am not the one who has the knowledge, Poirot. It is not me you should be worried about. There are others who understand the significance of that chess piece, others who have been searching for it far longer than I ever could, and if they find it, well, I fear for all of us." Poirot stood up, his resolve firm. "Then it is time to stop fearing, Monsieur Cartwright. It is time to find the answers." As Poirot turned to leave, Cartwright called after him, "Be careful, Monsieur Poirot. You may not like what you find." But Poirot did not respond. He had heard enough. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, and one thing was certain. The theft of the Ivory Knight was only the beginning of a much larger, more dangerous mystery. Chapter 4. The watchful eyes of the past Hercule Poirot left Reginald Cartwright's townhouse with a heavy weight in his chest. His mind raced with the implications of what Cartwright had hinted at. A chess set that was more than just an heirloom, a map to knowledge, perhaps even an object of power. The antiquarian's cryptic words were troubling, but Poirot knew that this was the kind of mystery he thrived on. He had seen the most improbable cases reveal themselves to be far more intricate and dangerous than one would expect. And this one, he was certain, was no different. As Poirot made his way back to his apartment, he considered the facts that had already emerged. Elizabeth Ardmore had, indeed, inherited the set, but it seemed that Gregory Ardmore had harboured some knowledge of its hidden nature, a secret passed down through the generations, concealed by the family to protect it. Whether or not Elizabeth knew the true significance of the chess pieces remained to be seen. What Cartwright had revealed to Poirot was both tantalizing and worrisome. But there were other matters to consider. Cartwright's warning had not been one to take lightly. "Be careful, Monsieur Poirot," the antiquarian had said, his voice edged with fear. "You may not like what you find." Those words echoed in Poirot's mind as he made his way to his apartment. But his resolve only grew stronger. There was a mystery here, and it was one that demanded answers. Poirot was no stranger to dangerous situations. The enigmatic symbols of a chess set, particularly one with a hidden history, were only the beginning of what he knew would be a complex and deadly puzzle. He was already formulating his next move when he arrived at his door, only to find a small, neatly folded letter waiting for him on the floor. It was postmarked from a local London address and written in an elegant hand. Without hesitation, Poirot opened the envelope. The letter read, "Monsieur Poirot, I trust that our mutual acquaintance has already apprised you of the matter regarding the chess set. I would caution you not to proceed without caution, for there are many who would prefer the secrets of the set to remain undisturbed. If you wish to proceed, come to me. I can provide further insight into its origins. Yours sincerely, a friend." Poirot's keen mind went immediately to work. The letter was carefully worded, its tone civil, but with an underlying sense of urgency. Whoever had written it knew of Poirot's involvement and had clearly anticipated his next steps. This was no coincidence. The letter was an invitation, but not one extended lightly. It was a warning, and perhaps a plea. After a brief pause, Poirot carefully folded the letter back into the envelope and placed it on his desk. The identity of the writer was still a mystery, but the message was clear. He was being drawn further into a web of intrigue. He could feel the pull of the mystery intensifying. This was no longer just a case of a stolen chess piece. It was a matter of life and death. Poirot spent the next few hours preparing for his visit to the address on the letter. The handwriting on the envelope seemed familiar, and there was something about the phrasing of the message that reminded him of someone he had met years ago. However, Poirot was cautious by nature, and he was unwilling to jump to conclusions based solely on intuition. He would approach this carefully, as he always did. The address led him to a small townhouse located in a less frequented area of London, one that seemed to have fallen out of public view. It was an older building, the kind that had once been grand but now stood as a mere shadow of its former self. The windows were slightly askew, and the wrought iron gate was rusted, though it appeared recently repaired. Poirot knocked firmly on the door, his eyes scanning the street as he waited for a response. Moments later, the door creaked open, and Poirot was greeted by a woman in her late 40s, her expression calm but wary. Her dark hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and her glasses gave her an air of studious intelligence. She dressed simply, but there was an unmistakable elegance about her that suggested a life of education and privilege. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot, I presume?" she said, her voice smooth but carrying a hint of tension. "Indeed, madame," Poirot replied, tipping his hat. "I believe you are the one who sent the letter." She nodded, stepping aside to allow him entry. "Please, come in. I am Dr. Isabelle Duval. I was once a colleague of Gregory Ardmore many years ago. It is my belief that you are in grave danger if you continue pursuing the mystery of the ivory chess piece without understanding the full picture." Poirot entered the townhouse, and as the door closed behind him, he was immediately struck by the atmosphere inside. The room was dimly lit by old lamps, and the shelves were filled with old books and papers, many of which appeared to be related to historical studies. Yet there was an air of unease in the room, a sense of secrecy that weighed heavily on Poirot's shoulders. "Sit," Dr. Duval offered, motioning to an armchair near the fire. "I assume you have already been informed of the chess set's importance, but there is more to this story than either Cartwright or Ardmore let on." Poirot lowered himself into the chair, his eyes fixed on Dr. Duval's face. "Please, madame, you have my full attention. What do you know of this set? What is its significance?" Duval's expression darkened, and she glanced around as though to ensure that no one else was listening. "The chess set is far more than a mere relic. It was crafted centuries ago by a secret society, one that no longer exists. Its design contains clues that, when pieced together, lead to a treasure of unimaginable value. But the treasure is not just gold or jewels. It is knowledge, lost to time. And that knowledge, if uncovered, could change everything." Poirot's interest was piqued, but he remained quiet, allowing Dr. Duval to continue. "The pieces themselves," she explained, "are not only works of art. Each piece, when examined correctly, reveals a part of a map, one that leads to the ultimate prize. But many have tried and failed to uncover its secret, and those who have come close have disappeared." Poirot absorbed her words carefully, feeling a shiver run down his spine. The stakes were indeed higher than he had initially thought. A treasure of knowledge hidden for centuries, and the threat of disappearing into the unknown. This was no ordinary case. "You must be careful, Monsieur Poirot," Dr. Duval said, her voice growing quieter. "There are others who seek the chess set. Some of them would stop at nothing to find it, no matter the cost. Poirot looked at her, his gaze steady. "I am not afraid of such dangers, madame. I have faced far worse." Dr. Duval nodded, her expression, softening. "Then you must proceed with caution. The game is far from over, but you are not alone in this, Monsieur Poirot. We will face the darkness together, as it should be." The room fell silent as Poirot processed the weight of her words. The mystery had only deepened, and the dangerous road ahead would test both his intellect and his courage. But one thing was certain. Hercule Poirot would not back away from the puzzle that had now entranced him. The secret of the ivory chess piece was just beginning to unfold, and soon the game would reach its most perilous stage. Chapter 5. Shadows of the past Poirot sat for a moment, contemplating Dr. Isabelle Duval's words. The idea of a treasure map hidden within the chess pieces was certainly alluring, but it was also chilling. Whoever had crafted this set clearly had more than just a penchant for fine craftsmanship. They had created something far more dangerous. The very concept of such a treasure, hidden for centuries, was an invitation to disaster, and it seemed that every step Poirot took only led him deeper into a web of intrigue and peril. As Dr. Duval bustled around her cluttered study, pulling old books and papers from shelves, Poirot's thoughts wandered back to the warning he had received from Cartwright. The antiquarian had cautioned him to be careful. The subtle emphasis in his tone had been enough to make Poirot's suspicion grow. The old man knew more than he was letting on, and his veiled words had stirred a sense of unease in Poirot's chest. Why was Cartwright so concerned? What was he hiding? And most importantly, why had he sent Poirot in this direction? "Here," Dr. Duval said suddenly, interrupting Poirot's thoughts. She held up a small, ornate book that appeared to be quite old. "This may help you understand the history of the chess set." Poirot leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. He had suspected as much. Dr. Duval was not merely a passive observer in this mystery. She was a key player. Her connection to Gregory Ardmore and her cryptic warning made her role in the unfolding events even more critical. "What is this?" Poirot asked, taking the book from her outstretched hands. It was bound in weathered leather. The gold embossing on the cover faded with age, but still legible. The title read, "The Secret of the Chess Masters, an Esoteric History." "It is a manuscript detailing the origins of the chess set," Dr. Duval explained. "It was written by a historian named Samuel Blackwood, who was, in fact, a former member of the same secret society that created the set. Blackwood was a scholar, but also a man with a deep interest in the occult. According to this manuscript, the chess set was never meant to be a simple game. It was created as a key to unlock hidden knowledge, secrets that could change the course of history." Poirot carefully opened the book, flipping through the pages with deliberate slowness. The text was dense, filled with complicated historical references, but it was clear that Blackwood had put much thought into his work. The chess set, it seemed, was not just a relic, it was a cipher. The pieces were carefully designed, with each one representing something far more significant than mere game pieces. They were symbols of power, of knowledge, and perhaps of something even more dangerous. As Poirot read, a troubling thought formed in his mind. If this manuscript were true, then the chess set was far more than an antique. It was part of a larger puzzle, a key to something far greater. The more he read, the more it became apparent that those who sought to uncover the secrets of the chess set were not just after treasure, but after a power that could shape the very future. "Do you know what the pieces represent?" Poirot asked, glancing up from the book. Dr. Duval nodded, her expression serious. "Yes, each piece is linked to a different part of an ancient map, one that shows the locations of certain lost sites. Sites that are believed to hold the keys to knowledge that could change the balance of power in the world. The bishop pieces represent knowledge hidden in religious texts. The queen pieces represent political power, and the knight pieces are connected to military strategies. The pawns, however, are the most important. They represent the sacrifices that must be made in order to uncover the ultimate truth." Poirot frowned. "Sacrifices?" "Yes," Dr. Duval said, her voice softening. "To understand the full secret of the chess set, one must be willing to make a sacrifice. That is why it has been guarded so fiercely. For centuries, no one has been able to unlock the full potential of the set, because those who come close to discovering its truth are often unwilling to pay the price." Poirot considered this. It was a powerful idea, one that hinted at something far darker than mere treasure hunting. If there was a price to be paid, then there were likely others involved, others who were willing to do whatever it took to gain control of whatever knowledge or power the chess set could unlock. "This is no simple puzzle, then," Poirot mused aloud. "The chess set is not just a map to a treasure. It is a map to something much more dangerous, knowledge that could shift the balance of power in the world." Dr. Duval nodded. "Exactly. And there are those who will stop at nothing to possess it. That is why I urge you, Monsieur Poirot, to be careful. The pieces you are seeking are not just objects of art. They are keys to something much darker. And those who seek to unlock that darkness will do whatever it takes to find the pieces, even if it means killing for them." Poirot's mind was already turning over the implications of Dr. Duval's words. The chess set was not just a game. It was a weapon of knowledge and power, one that could be used for good or for ill. And now it seemed that Poirot had become a player in a game that was much more dangerous than he had first anticipated. "You are right to be concerned, madam," Poirot said, his voice calm but firm. "I have always prided myself on solving mysteries, but this one is unlike any other." Dr. Duval looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. "I had hoped you would see it that way, Monsieur Poirot, but be warned, the closer you get to the truth, the more dangerous things will become. People have died trying to uncover the secrets of the chess set. You must be prepared for what lies ahead." Poirot stood up, his mind racing. He was not one to shy away from danger, but he knew that this was no ordinary case. The chess set had the potential to change the world, and there were forces at work that would stop at nothing to ensure its secrets remained buried. "I will proceed carefully, madam," Poirot said, his voice steady. "But I will not be intimidated. I will uncover the truth, no matter the cost." Dr. Duval gave him a small, knowing smile. "I thought you might say that." As Poirot left her townhouse, the weight of the mystery pressed down on him more heavily than ever. He knew that the puzzle was far from complete, and that more dangerous. Pieces of the puzzle were still waiting to be revealed. But he also knew that he was the only one who could solve it. The chess set had been hidden for centuries, its secrets carefully guarded. But now, it seemed, the game was changing, and Hercule Poirot would stop at nothing to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing the darkness that lurked just beyond the edge of the board. Chapter 6. The Queen's Gambit. The fog had settled over London like a damp shroud, muffling the sounds of the bustling city. Poirot stood on the doorstep of his modest flat, looking up at the grey sky. He had received a message earlier that morning. A cryptic note slid under his door. "The Queen's Gambit is in play. Tonight it will be checkmate." The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the phrase was not. It was one of the more obscure references in the manuscript Dr. Duval had given him, and it seemed to indicate that the chess set, with all its mysteries, was more than just a historical curiosity. The note was clear. Someone was making their move, and Poirot was the one they were inviting to the game. The message had set his mind racing. He had already learned that the chess set's pieces were not just symbols of ancient knowledge, but also part of a dangerous game that had been played over centuries, its consequences felt even today. Now, it seemed that the game was accelerating, and the time for careful investigation had passed. Whoever had sent him the note was ready for the next phase, and Poirot knew that he must act quickly. His first stop was Gregory Ardmore's estate. The enigmatic antiques dealer had promised to help Poirot understand the origins of the ivory chess pieces. But Poirot suspected there was more to Ardmore's interest than mere academic curiosity. Ardmore was too polished, too smooth for a man whose business was in rare, often controversial collectibles. The man had knowledge, and Poirot was certain he was not sharing all of it. Arriving at the grand, somewhat dilapidated estate, Poirot was greeted by the butler, a tall, thin man with a sombre expression. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot, welcome," the butler said, stepping aside to allow him entry. "Mr. Ardmore is expecting you. He is in his study." Poirot nodded, stepping into the dimly lit hallway. The mansion, though impressive, had the air of neglect. Dust clung to the edges of ornate furniture, and the faint scent of mildew hung in the air. It was as if the house had once been a grand symbol of wealth and importance, but now it was little more than a relic, much like the antiques it housed. Following the butler through the grand hallway, Poirot's sharp eyes took in the surroundings. The place was full of antique clocks, portraits of stern-faced ancestors, and strange objects from bygone eras. A few of the items had been freshly dusted, but others, like the large grandfather clock at the far end of the hall, appeared to have been untouched for years. When they reached the study, the butler knocked once before entering. "Mr. Ardmore," the butler said, his voice low. The man at the desk looked up. Gregory Ardmore was seated behind a cluttered desk, papers scattered everywhere. He was a man in his mid-50s, with slicked-back dark hair and sharp features that always seemed to be just a touch too perfect. His clothing, though expensive, was always a little too immaculate, too put together. There was something unnerving about his smooth demeanour. "Monsieur Poirot," Ardmore greeted, standing and offering a firm handshake. "It is a pleasure to see you again. I trust you received my message." I did, monsieur, Poirot said, allowing his eyes to scan the room. And I must confess, I am intrigued. You mentioned something about the Queen's Gambit. Can you tell me more? Ardmer's face remained unreadable, but Poirot noted the slight tightening of his jaw. He was hiding something, a reaction too subtle to be coincidental. Ah, the Queen's Gambit, Ardmer murmured. A metaphor, of course. A move in the game, as it were. I suspect you have already realized that there are many layers to the story of the Ivory chess set. It is not just a game, as some might believe. Poirot nodded slowly. Indeed, monsieur. I am aware that the chess set is linked to more than just a historical curiosity. It is, as you say, a game, but one far more dangerous than most would realize. Ardmer's lips curved into a thin smile. Precisely. You see, Poirot, the chess set is more than just a map to a treasure. It is a key to an ancient and powerful secret. The game has been played for centuries, with many players, some known and others more elusive. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And where do you fit into this game, monsieur? Ardmore seemed to hesitate for a moment, before leaning forward in his chair, his eyes locking with Poirot's. I am, shall we say, a facilitator, a guide. There are many who seek the pieces, and I provide them with the means to acquire what they desire. But I do not merely deal in objects, Poirot. I deal in the knowledge that comes with those objects. The chess set is just the beginning of something much larger, something that could change everything. Change everything? Poirot echoed, his voice calm, but with an edge of curiosity. Ardmore nodded, his expression becoming more intense. The pieces are connected to a power, a secret that has been passed down through generations. It is said that the one who solves the puzzle of the chess set will unlock knowledge. Knowledge that has the power to reshape the world. It is not just about the treasure, Poirot. It is about what lies behind the treasure, what it represents. Poirot studied Ardmore carefully. The man was clearly knowledgeable, but his motives were far from transparent. There was something unsettling in the way he spoke about the chess set, as if it were a game he had been playing for years, one that others could not understand. The power he spoke of was not just about wealth or prestige. It was about something much more dangerous. And you, monsieur, Poirot said slowly, do you believe that you are the one who will solve the puzzle? Ardmore's smile remained, but there was a flicker of something darker in his eyes, perhaps. But I am not the only player in this game, Poirot. You too are a part of it now. Poirot did not flinch, but the weight of Ardmore's words hung in the air. He had no doubt that Ardmore was trying to pull him deeper into the mystery. But the question was why? What was his ultimate goal? And what exactly was the secret behind the chess set? Very well, monsieur, Poirot said, standing up. I believe you have provided me with much to think about. But I must be off. There are still many pieces to this puzzle that remain unknown to me. Ardmore rose as well, his smile never fading. Of course, Poirot. But remember, the Queen's Gambit is in play. The game has begun. As Poirot left the estate, his mind was filled with more questions than answers. Ardmer's words echoed in his head. The game has begun. It was clear that someone was playing a very dangerous game, and Poirot was right in the middle of it. But the most pressing question remained. What did the chess pieces truly represent? And who else was playing the game? The fog outside seemed to grow thicker as Poirot made his way through the streets, his thoughts racing. He had no doubt that the stakes were higher than he had initially realized, and he could not help but wonder how many people had already lost their lives in this game, and how many more would before the final move was made. The pieces were moving, and Poirot knew that his next move would be crucial. Chapter 7. A Dangerous Move. The London fog had thickened as Poirot made his way back to his flat, the muffled sounds of the city seeming more distant, as though the world had quieted in anticipation. His thoughts swirled around the cryptic conversation he had just had with Gregory Ardmore. The man's words haunted him, and Poirot could not shake the feeling that he was standing on the precipice of something far greater than mere historical intrigue. What secret did the chess set hold? And who, among the many players, would emerge victorious in this high-stakes game? He arrived at his flat, which felt unusually still. Poirot paused by the door, his instincts telling him that something was amiss. The air seemed heavier, charged with an invisible tension. Unlocking the door, Poirot stepped inside, only to be greeted by an unexpected sight. A man sat in his armchair, a glass of brandy in hand, staring into the fire that crackled quietly in the hearth. Poirot's eyes narrowed, immediately sizing up the figure. The man, tall with dark hair and sharp features, was dressed impeccably, yet his presence in Poirot's flat was both unexpected and unsettling. The air of casual elegance the man exuded seemed out of place in Poirot's modest surroundings. "Ah, mon ami, I was wondering when you would return," the man said, his voice smooth and refined. "I trust you are not too surprised to see me." Poirot remained calm, though his mind raced. "I am surprised, yes, but I am not easily taken off guard, monsieur," Poirot replied. "And who might you be?" The man set down his glass, standing and offering a smile that was both charming and disconcerting. "Forgive me for my abruptness. My name is Charles Dupont. I'm an associate of Mr. Ardmore's. Perhaps you've heard of me." Poirot's mind immediately made the connection. Dupont was a name that had come up in his research. Charles Dupont was an antiquities dealer, with a reputation for dealing in rare and often controversial items. He was known to have connections with several underground networks dealing in valuable historical artifacts, and his association with Ardmore seemed to indicate that he was no stranger to the shadowy side of the antiques world. "I have heard of you, Monsieur Dupont," Poirot said, his voice steady. "But I must confess, I do not recall an invitation for you to make yourself at home in my flat." Dupont chuckled softly, a low, almost musical sound that seemed to echo off the walls. "Ah, Poirot, you are a man of precision and order, yes? But sometimes one must make a bold move in this game. You see, I have come to offer you a proposition, a partnership, if you will. After all, we are both seeking the same thing, the secret behind the ivory chess set." Poirot's expression remained unchanged, though his mind began to churn. Partnership? Dupont's sudden appearance could not be a coincidence, and his charm masked a hidden agenda. It was clear that Dupont had his own interest in the chess set, one that did not align with Poirot's own. I am not in the habit of making deals with strangers, Monsieur Dupin, Poirot said, his voice cool, and particularly not with those whose motives remain unclear. Dupin smiled again, but this time there was an edge to it. Of course, Poirot, I understand your reluctance, but you must know that in this game alliances are necessary. If you wish to uncover the truth, you must accept that you cannot do it alone. I am offering you a chance to collaborate. Together, we could uncover the secrets of the chess set faster than you could on your own. Poirot's eyes studied Dupont intently. There was something unsettling in the man's demeanour, a practised smoothness that bordered on insincerity. Dupont's offer was tempting, yet Poirot knew better than to trust someone who so easily offered assistance without revealing their true intentions. I believe I can manage without your assistance, monsieur, Poirot replied, his tone unwavering. But if you truly have information to share, I will listen. Dupont's smile faded slightly, replaced by a more serious expression. He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing as if measuring Poirot's every reaction. You misunderstand me, Poirot, he said, his voice now softer, more insistent. I am not merely offering information. I am offering protection. There are people involved in this game who are far more dangerous than you realize. If you continue down this path alone, you may find yourself caught in a trap from which even you may not escape. Poirot's gaze never wavered. You speak of danger, Monsieur Dupin, but I have faced danger before, and I do not fear it. Dupin laughed lightly, but there was no mirth in his eyes. Oh, I am certain you have faced danger, Poirot, but I assure you, this is not like anything you have encountered before. You may be clever, but there are forces at play here that require more than just intellect to navigate. Sometimes, in order to win the game, one must be willing to make alliances with the right people. Poirot's thoughts raced. Dupont's words were laced with hidden threats, and Poirot had learned to trust his instincts. The man was clearly trying to manipulate him, to draw him into a larger conspiracy. But what was Dupont's role in all of this? Was he a mere pawn, or did he have more to gain from this dangerous game than he was letting on? I will consider your offer, monsieur, Poirot said finally, his voice calm but firm. But let me be clear. I do not take kindly to threats, whether veiled or direct. If you wish to play this game, you will play by my rules. Dupont's lips curled into a smile, but it was a smile that did not reach his eyes. Very well, Poirot, but remember this. The game has already begun, and there are moves being made that you cannot see. You are not as in control as you think. With that, Dupont turned on his heel and walked toward the door, pausing only to glance back at Poirot with a knowing look. Think on it, Poirot. The pieces are in motion, and you must decide whether you will be a player or a spectator. Poirot stood still as the door clicked shut behind Dupont, his mind churning with the weight of the conversation. What did Dupont know that he had not yet revealed? And why had he chosen to confront Poirot now, at this pivotal moment in the investigation? Poirot sat down at his desk, his fingers lightly tapping the surface. The game was afoot, and every move, every word, seemed to carry hidden meaning. But Poirot would not be swayed. He had learned long ago that in order to solve a mystery, one must first understand the players. And Dupont was clearly a player who would stop at nothing to achieve his goal. But Poirot would not allow himself to be manipulated. He had his own game to play, and he would make his move when the time was right. The secret of the ivory chess piece remained elusive, but Poirot knew that the more players who entered the game, the closer he would come to uncovering the truth, and he would not rest until the final piece fell into place. Chapter 8. The King's Gambit. The following days passed in a blur of mounting tension. Poirot, ever the meticulous observer, took note of every subtle shift in the behaviour of those around him. Charles Dupont's offer still lingered in his mind, but he had no intention of letting the man pull him into a web of intrigue and danger without further investigation. The more Dupont tried to convince him of the peril he faced, the more Poirot doubted the man's sincerity. Poirot's investigation had reached a point where he could almost feel the solution lurking at the edges of his thoughts, yet the final pieces eluded him. Every lead he pursued seemed to circle back to one point: the chess set. The mystery of the ivory chess piece, where it had come from, why it was so valuable, and what role it played in the dark game of secrets and deception, remained unanswered. On a brisk morning, Poirot received an unexpected visitor at his flat. This time it was not Dupont, but rather a woman with an air of urgency about her. She was tall, with striking features and an aura of confidence, though something in her eyes betrayed a deeper worry. Her name, as Poirot would learn, was Eleanor Forsyte, and she wasted no time in getting to the point. "Mr. Poirot, I need your help," she said, her voice steady but laden with an undercurrent of distress. "I believe someone is trying to kill me." Poirot raised an eyebrow, intrigued. He motioned for her to take a seat, his mind already working. "Mademoiselle Forsyte, you must forgive my directness, but why would anyone wish to harm you?" Dr. C hesitated before answering, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the edge of her gloves. "It is not just me they are after. It is the chess set, the one you are investigating." Poirot's interest piqued, and he leaned forward, his steely gaze never leaving her face. "You are connected to the chess set?" Eleanor nodded, her face pale. "Yes, my family has owned it for generations. I was told it was just a valuable antique, but now I fear it is much more than that. I've been receiving threats, warnings that I must hand it over. I don't know who they are, but I am certain they will stop at nothing to get it." Poirot studied her for a long moment, then stood up. "I am afraid you are not the only one who is in danger, Mademoiselle Forsyte. There are others involved in this matter who would stop at nothing to control the chess set. You are not the first to seek my help in this mystery, and I doubt you will be the last." Eleanor's eyes widened with fear. "So it is true. Someone is trying to take it from me. What do I do, Mr. Poirot?" Poirot walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the streets below. The fog had rolled in once again, blanketing the city in a thick, oppressive silence. "The game has already begun, mademoiselle. It is too late to retreat now, but I will help you. I will not allow anyone to use you as a pawn in their schemes." Eleanor looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude, but also with a spark of apprehension. "What will you do?" Poirot sat down at his desk, his fingers lightly tapping the surface. The game was afoot, and every move, every word, seemed to carry hidden meaning. But Poirot would not be swayed. He had learned long ago that in order to solve a mystery, one must first understand the players. And Dupin was clearly a player who would stop at nothing to achieve his goal. But Poirot would not allow himself to be manipulated. He had his own game to play, and he would make his move when the time was right. The secret of the ivory chess piece remained elusive, but Poirot knew that the more players who entered the game, the closer he would come to uncovering the truth, and he would not rest until the final piece fell into place. Chapter 8. The King's Gambit. The following days passed in a blur of mounting tension. Poirot, ever the meticulous observer, took note of every subtle shift in the behaviour of those around him. Charles Dupin's offer still lingered in his mind, but he had no intention of letting the man pull him into a web of intrigue and danger without further investigation. The more Dupin tried to convince him of the peril he faced, the more Poirot doubted the man's sincerity. Poirot's investigation had reached a point where he could almost feel the solution lurking at the edges of his thoughts. Yet the final pieces eluded him. Every lead he pursued seemed to circle back to one point: the chess set, the mystery of the ivory chess piece, where it had come from, why it was so valuable, and what role it played in the dark game of secrets and deception, remained unanswered. On a brisk morning, Poirot received an unexpected visitor at his flat. This time it was not Dupin, but rather a woman with an air of urgency about her. She was tall, with striking features and an aura of confidence, though something in her eyes betrayed a deeper worry. Her name, as Poirot would learn, was Eleanor Forsyte, and she wasted no time in getting to the point. "Mr. Poirot, I need your help," she said, her voice steady but laden with an undercurrent of distress. "I believe someone is trying to kill me." Poirot raised an eyebrow, intrigued. He motioned for her to take a seat, his mind already working. "Mademoiselle Forsyte, you must forgive my directness, but why would anyone wish to harm you?" Eleanor hesitated before answering, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the edge of her gloves. "It is not just me they are after. It is the chess set. The one you are investigating." Poirot's interest piqued, and he leaned forward, his steely gaze never leaving her face. "You are connected to the chess set?" Eleanor nodded, her face pale. "Yes, my family has owned it for generations. I was told it was just a valuable antique, but now I fear it is much more than that. I've been receiving threats, warnings that I must hand it over. I don't know who they are, but I am certain they will stop at nothing to get it." Poirot studied her for a long moment, then stood up. "I am afraid you are not the only one who is in danger, Mademoiselle Forsyte. There are others involved in this matter who would stop at nothing to control the chess set. You are not the first to seek my help in this mystery, and I doubt you will be the last." Eleanor's eyes widened with fear. "So it is true. Someone is trying to take it from me. What do I do, Mr. Poirot?" Poirot walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the streets below. The fog had rolled in once again, blanketing the city in a thick, oppressive silence. "The game has already begun, mademoiselle. It is too late to retreat now. But I will help you. I will not allow anyone to use you as a pawn in their schemes." Eleanor looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude, but also with a spark of apprehension. What will you do?" Poirot turned to face her, his expression as calm and assured as ever. "I will continue my investigation. I will uncover the truth behind this chess set and the people who are so desperate to control it. But in the meantime, you must be vigilant. Trust no one, not even those who appear to be on your side." With that, Poirot dismissed her, promising to meet with her again soon. But as Eleanor left, Poirot's thoughts were already racing. Eleanor Forsyte's involvement in this case added a new layer of complexity. The threats she had received were not mere empty words. There was a calculated danger in the air. And yet the puzzle pieces did not quite fit together. Why was she, specifically, the target of such a ruthless campaign? What did she know, or rather, what did her family know, that had made them the focus of this dangerous pursuit? Poirot needed to gather more information. He had a suspicion that this case was not as straightforward as it appeared. There were hidden forces at work, manipulating events from the shadows. His mind turned to the key players he had encountered so far: Gregory Ardmore, Charles Dupont, Eleanor Forsyte, and the many others who had crossed his path in the course of his investigation. Each one seemed to have a piece of the puzzle, but no one seemed to possess the full picture. Poirot had always relied on his powers of observation to piece together the smallest details that others overlooked. He could sense that there was more to this chess set than just its ivory craftsmanship. It was not a mere antique. It was a symbol of something far more significant. But what? A sudden thought occurred to him. Perhaps the key to unlocking the mystery lay not in the chess set itself, but in its provenance. Who had owned it before? Where had it come from? If Poirot could uncover its history, he might discover a link to the events that had unfolded. Later that day, Poirot visited the British Museum. He knew that its archives contained a wealth of information, and he hoped to find some trace of the chess set's origins. After much searching through dusty records and ancient catalogues, Poirot uncovered a name that sent a chill down his spine: Lord Edmund Blackwood. Blackwood had been a renowned collector of rare and valuable artifacts in the late 19th century. His collection was said to contain some of the most coveted pieces in the world, and the ivory chess set was rumoured to have been one of his prized possessions. However, Lord Blackwood had died under mysterious circumstances, and his collection had been scattered after his death. There were rumours of foul play surrounding his demise, but the details were hazy, lost in the passage of time. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he read the records. Lord Blackwood's death had occurred just months before the chess set had disappeared from the public eye, leaving no trace of its whereabouts. The mystery of its origins had deepened. What had happened to it after Blackwood's death? Who had been the last person to see it? Poirot knew that he had only scratched the surface of this puzzle. But with every step, he felt himself drawing closer to the truth. The game was nearing its climax, and he had no intention of losing. As Poirot left the museum, he was met by a cold gust of wind. The fog had begun to dissipate, and the world outside seemed sharper, clearer. But in his mind, the fog remained. The pieces of the puzzle were scattered, but Poirot was determined to bring them together, and when he did, the secret of the ivory chess piece would be revealed in all its dangerous complexity. The question was no longer whether Poirot could solve the mystery. The question was, would he be able to do so before the players in this deadly game made their next move? Chapter 9. The Final Move. The air in London had shifted, carrying with it an unsettling tension. Poirot could sense it everywhere he went, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The closer he came to the truth, the more dangerous the game became. Every piece of information he uncovered only deepened the mystery. The elusive connections between the chess set, Lord Blackwood's death, and the shadowy figures surrounding Eleanor Forsyte seemed to be converging on a singular, dangerous point. Poirot sat in his study, the evening sun casting long shadows across the room. He had just returned from a visit to the Forsyte estate, where he had spoken with Eleanor and her father, Sir William Forsyte. Though Sir William appeared to be a man of immense wealth and influence, his manner was cold, and his answers to Poirot's questions were often evasive. Eleanor, on the other hand, had seemed increasingly distraught, her fears about the chess set growing more desperate with each passing day. Poirot couldn't help but notice how both father and daughter seemed to harbour a deep connection to the object at the heart of this mystery. But what was the true nature of that connection? And why was it so fiercely protected? The door to his study creaked open, and Captain Hastings entered, his face marked with the same air of concern that had plagued him for the past few days. "You've been quiet, Poirot," Hastings said, settling into the chair opposite the detective. "I take it you've learned something." Poirot paused for a moment, his fingers steepled before him as he regarded his friend with his usual intensity. "Indeed, Hastings. But as you well know, in matters such as these, it is often not the information we have that leads to the solution, but the gaps between the facts. There is much that is being concealed from me." Hastings frowned, his brow furrowing with concern. "So the mystery deepens, then?" Poirot nodded slowly. "The chess set is but a part of the larger puzzle. It is a symbol, Hastings, a key to something much darker than any of us could have imagined. The more I learn, the more I realize that Lord Blackwood's death and the Forsyte family's involvement are far from coincidental." Hastings shifted in his seat, clearly intrigued. "But why? What is it about this chess set that makes it so valuable, so dangerous?" Poirot leaned forward, his voice lowering to a whisper. As if speaking aloud, the words would bring the full weight of the mystery into sharp focus. "The chess set is not simply an antique, mon ami. It is a piece of a much larger plan. It was crafted for a purpose that goes beyond the boundaries of simple greed or wealth." Hastings absorbed this information, though his expression betrayed more confusion than understanding. "But what is that purpose, Poirot? What is it that they want?" Poirot sighed, his mind racing as he pieced together the final elements of the puzzle. He stood walking toward the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "It is not only about the set itself, Hastings. It is about what it represents. Power, influence, control. The chess set was a tool, and those who covet it are not after its value as an object, but rather the message it carries." "The message?" Hastings echoed, clearly puzzled. "But what could it possibly say?" Poirot turned to face his friend, his expression grave. "It speaks of a secret alliance, Hastings, a conspiracy that has been decades in the making. Lord Blackwood's death, Eleanor Forsyte's distress, the whispers surrounding the chess set. They are all part of this larger game. There is a hidden organization, an old network of powerful men who wish to control events from the shadows, and the chess set is the key to unlocking it all. Hastings' eyes widened. Are you saying these men are behind the threats to Eleanor's life? Precisely, Poirot replied. The threats are not random. They are part of a carefully orchestrated campaign to recover the chess set, and they will stop at nothing to get their hands on it. Eleanor, as the rightful heir, stands in their way. But she is not the only one in danger. There are others, people like Gregory Ardmore, Charles Dupont, and even your own involvement in this matter, Hastings, that will all play a role in what is to come. Hastings stood up abruptly, pacing the room as he processed the implications. This is far bigger than we first thought, isn't it? I mean, this isn't just about some rich man's collection of antiques. This is about power and influence, about controlling the future. Poirot nodded, his gaze unwavering. Exactly. And those who stand in the way will be eliminated. That is why I must act swiftly. We cannot afford to let these men maneuver in the shadows any longer. Poirot's mind was now working at full speed. He had spent days, even weeks, gathering information, making connections. But now it was clear that time was running out. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but it would require one final push, one final move to bring the entire game to an end. I must confront them, Poirot murmured to himself. But first, we need to know who is truly behind this conspiracy. The game is being played at a much higher level than we anticipated. Do you have a plan, Poirot? Hastings asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Poirot turned to his friend, a look of quiet determination in his eyes. I do, but we must act carefully. Every move must be calculated, every step measured. If I am to expose them, we must play our own game. The night fell over London, casting its long shadows across the city. Poirot's thoughts remained focused, his mind a whirlwind of strategies and observations. He had come so far, but the end was in sight. The pieces were all in place, and now it was time to make the final move. As the clock struck midnight, Poirot knew that the endgame had begun. Chapter 10. The Final Gambit. The morning after Poirot's quiet declaration to Hastings, the tension in the air was palpable. Poirot had a plan, but it was not without its risks. He had spent the night preparing, organizing his thoughts, and ensuring that all the pieces were in place. The chess set, once a mere object of intrigue, had now become the symbol of a much larger conflict. The forces at play were powerful, and they were closing in on Eleanor Forsyte, perhaps even on Poirot himself. Yet, in the face of this mounting danger, Poirot remained composed. His mind worked methodically, drawing connections between every new clue and every conversation he had engaged in. The chess set, which had seemed so innocuous at first, was now the key to unlocking a decades-old conspiracy, and Poirot knew that in matters such as these, timing was everything. "I am ready," Poirot said, as he adjusted his collar in front of the mirror, his sharp eyes catching every detail. He turned to Hastings, who was seated at the table, his own expression a mixture of nervousness and resolve. "You're sure about this?" Hastings asked. "This is it, isn't it? The final step. Poirot nodded, his face unreadable. Indeed, Hastings. The pieces are set, and the game is about to reach its conclusion. The players will reveal themselves, and we will discover who among them has been orchestrating the entire affair. The time for subtlety was over. Poirot's strategy had reached its peak, and now it was time to confront the forces behind the chess set, and by extension, the shadowy figures who had been pulling the strings. They had underestimated him, thinking that he was simply chasing after a trinket, a piece of antique value. But the puzzle had always been more than that, and Poirot knew that the final reveal would shake them to their core. "We begin at Forsyte House," Poirot declared, his gaze hardening. "Eleanor Forsyte must be protected, but it is there, in that house, that the truth will emerge. There we will make our move." It wasn't long before the two detectives arrived at Forsyte House, a large, imposing manor set on the outskirts of London. The estate was as grand as ever, but there was an air of unease about it today, a sense of imminent change. Poirot had no doubt that their every step was being watched, and the thought brought a sharp thrill to his mind. He had anticipated this moment for weeks, and now it was time for the final confrontation. Inside the house, Eleanor Forsyte was waiting for them. Her face, usually so composed, was drawn with worry and exhaustion. She had no idea that this was the day the puzzle would finally be solved, the day when the truth about her family's legacy and her own role in it would be revealed. "Poirot," Eleanor said, her voice quiet but tinged with fear. "I'm so glad you've come. I don't know what to do anymore. My father, he's become so distant, so cold, and the threats, they've only gotten worse." Poirot smiled, though it was not one of reassurance. "Madame Forsyte, you have nothing to fear. The game has been played, but now the time has come for it to be over." She nodded, still unsure of what that meant, but trusting in the detective's words. Poirot turned to Hastings, giving him a silent command. Hastings, ever the reliable companion, stepped forward with a packet in his hand, a bundle of papers that had been painstakingly assembled over the past several days. "These are the final pieces," Hastings said. "Everything you need to expose them." Poirot took the papers with a quiet nod, scanning the contents. There it was, the final link, the secret chess piece. The ivory knight that had once seemed so innocuous now held the key to unravelling the entire conspiracy. It wasn't just a collector's item, it was a coded message, one that had been hidden for years within the intricate design of the chess set. "This," Poirot said softly, "is where it all began. The ivory chess piece is more than just an artifact. It is a symbol of a secret society, one that has been operating in the shadows for decades. The members of this group are among the most powerful in England, and they will stop at nothing to regain what they believe is rightfully theirs." Eleanor gasped, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch the chess piece in Poirot's hand. "A secret society," she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "But why would they want this chess set?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with understanding. "It is not the set they want, madame. It is what it represents. It is a map, a blueprint of power, a guide to controlling the future of this nation. The chess set was created for one purpose, to unite the members of this secret society under a common cause. Eleanor took a step back, her face pale. "But who are they?" Poirot's gaze hardened. "They are the ones you least suspect, Madame Forsyte. Your father, Sir William, was involved in this conspiracy long before you were born. He was a key player in the formation of this secret society, and the chess set was a tool he used to cement his position." Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. "My father?" she whispered. "No, that can't be true." Poirot's voice softened. "I know this is difficult to accept, but the evidence is clear. Your father's connections, his dealings with certain individuals, his influence in the highest circles, all of it points to one truth. Sir William Forsyte is at the heart of this conspiracy." The room was silent for a long moment. Eleanor's face was a mixture of disbelief and sorrow as she absorbed the weight of Poirot's words. But there was one question left. "And Lord Blackwood?" she asked. "How does he fit into all of this?" Poirot's eyes darkened. "Lord Blackwood was a threat to them, Madame Forsyte. He had uncovered their plans and was preparing to expose them. They could not allow that, and so they eliminated him, making his death appear to be an accident." Eleanor's voice shook. "But why didn't you tell me this sooner? Why didn't you—" Poirot held up his hand, silencing her. "I had to be certain, madam. And now I am. Sir William Forsyte is the mastermind behind the conspiracy, and the time has come for him to answer for his crimes." With that, Poirot turned toward the door, signalling that the final act had arrived. The game was over. The conspiracy had been exposed. As they exited the room, Poirot's mind remained sharp, his every instinct guiding him toward the final confrontation. Sir William Forsyte would not escape justice. The chess set was now in its rightful place, its secrets laid bare, and Poirot, as always, had solved the puzzle. The game was finished, and the truth had been revealed.